Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Cook from the Iris Center for Mindfulness, Peace, and Healing. Welcome to our education series on mind-body-lifestyle medicine and how you might wholesomely balance your biopsychosocial spiritual systems to generate health and well-being. Let's start by stopping. The invitation here is to put down anything that you might be holding, maybe shift the body just a little bit to give yourself a signal that right now you're going to do something different than everyday mind, and intentionally take a moment to stop and step back and just bring attention to the felt sense of the body in whatever posture you are in at this moment. If you are sitting, feeling the weight of the body supported by the chair or the couch, feeling the feet on the floor, perhaps becoming aware of any other sensations that might be present in the body without making any necessary judgments about them or jumping to conclusions about them, just noticing them. And even noticing the felt sense of the body being breathed. Feeling of the breath flowing in and flowing out without any need to manage or control or change the breath in any way, just simply witnessing or observing this feeling of the body being breathed. In a moment, when I ring a little chime to end this short practice, purposefully redirecting your attention from the body and the breath to the sound of the chime itself. This is often called a grounding or anchoring practice, and the invitation is to intentionally get off the hamster wheel we ride most of the day, to create short moments when we purposefully give ourselves a break from that very strong tendency we have in the mind and body to be busy, on the go, doing all of the time. To be constantly thinking about things, lost in thought, past and future, living in the story of me. Instead, for a brief few moments, we intentionally slow down and rest, gently focusing our attention energy on just one thing, in this case, the body and the breath, to ground us in this present moment. Okay, thank you for joining in. This is our introduction to mind-body-lifestyle medicine, self-regulation, self-exploration program. And it is just that, an introduction. There is a lot of information available to us about looking after ourselves, which I will be introducing to you over several short sessions. I will share some details about mind-body-lifestyle medicine, its focus on looking after ourselves, putting the oxygen on ourselves, so to speak, and building resilience and effective self-care in the face of whatever life may bring us. The two main components or processes of this mind-body approach to looking after ourselves include self-regulation, that is, intentionally influencing our own experience in many different ways, including with the breath, the body, and the mind and psyche. And secondly, intentionally getting to know ourselves better, the process of self-exploration. This introduction to mind-body-lifestyle medicine is really focusing on our self-regulation piece, though as you do that, self-exploration comes along with it. I will begin this session with some basic science that I will share with you in metaphoric terms that I hope will allow you to have some idea of how you work and what you can do to work with yourself. Let's start with this thought exercise. if you make the decision to look after your own car and not be running it off to the mechanic all the time, you're going to have to know a little bit more about how the car works, a little bit more about the bits and pieces of the car and how they work by themselves and how they work together, or what we call integrate. You would also need to know a little bit more about what kinds of things can get out of balance with your car and what tools you might need to work on the car. It would also be helpful to have a manual or two to understand more about the car and the tools and how to use them. Ultimately, you must pick the tools up and put them to work. Caring for yourself is not different. If we don't know a little bit about how our car works, we are already behind the 8 ball in working with it. And similarly, if we don't have some ideas about how we work, we are already behind the 8 ball in working with ourselves. So we'll be starting off by getting to know a little bit about how we work with some basic science. But before I get there, I want to say a little bit more about mind-body-lifestyle medicine. As an introduction to mind-body-lifestyle medicine, I'd like to share with you some specific science to inform the self-care actions we will want to adopt for ourselves. Beginning with the 2 core processes of self-regulation and self-exploration, the capacity we have to get to know and understand ourselves and to apply that to intentionally influencing and regulating our inner systems and behavior. There's also lots of other basic science to explore as well, which I will do in other sessions. To begin with, mind-body medicine is based in the ancient understanding that the mind and body and spirit and environment are not separate things. In fact, for most of human existence, we have intuitively known that the mind, body, spirit, and environment are intimately connected, even on a continuum, such that each affects the other both directly and indirectly. However, over the past 300 or 400 years, with the advent of the scientific method, we have to a large degree, if you'd like, over-focused on the physical, the body side, what we can see and measure, and have lost sight of the connections here with the other aspects of our reality, which are less easily seen and measured. But our modern science, with new ways of seeing and measuring and knowing, has come back to understanding how all these things are interlinked, and we have some good hardcore understandings from research in the laboratory and in the field and in our lives, how the mind, body, spirit, environment are so interconnected with each other. Just consider what we are learning about our gut's microbiome and its quite profound impact on health and well-being. Modern science is confirming this mind, body, spirit, environment connection. Modern science is exploring and better understanding the core determinants of health, that is, what generates health and well-being, what's often called salutogenesis. And it is also exploring and understanding the fundamental aspects of how we work, like neuroplasticity and reinforcement learning, or what I call the training effect principle, the structure and function of neural networks and distributed nervous systems, especially for our interest here, the executive attention and default mode networks, and the approach, nurture, and avoidance protection opportunity threat systems. I will cover each of these in separate sessions. Let's start with a little bit more about mind-body-lifestyle medicine. Mind-body-lifestyle medicine is oriented to helping us learn to self-explore, get to know ourselves better in all domains, and to effectively self-regulate, intentionally influencing our biopsychosocial spiritual state to live effectively in the face of whatever life brings us. That is, to effectively monitor and modulate ourselves, our autonomic nervous system. For this introduction, we will specifically be interested in understanding and working with our autonomic nervous system as it is fundamentally in the driver's seat. In modern lingo, mind-body-lifestyle medicine is oriented to getting to know our settings, how we work in all domains. You can think of mind-body-lifestyle medicine as having to do with building and living in your house of well-being, generating and creating health, resilience, and well-being, being engaged in a salutogenic way of living. This term, salutogenesis, for generating health and well-being, comes from the Latin salut, meaning safety, well-being, health, and the Greek geneste, meaning origin, to be born. Most of us have a distinct sense that we want to live in our own house of well-being. But your house of well-being must have a solid foundation, like any other structure. So the question might be, what are the foundations of our house of well-being? We often think of these as the determinants of health. We can think of the determinants of health, those things that feed into health and well-being over the long term, not just the short term, as falling into two categories. The first category is often referred to as the social determinants of health. I like to think of this as how the world is with you. So if you stop and think about it for a moment, how much influence do you have over how the world is with you? Very little, really. A little bit, perhaps. But for the most part, you don't have much control over the family you are born into, the genetics you inherit, the country you are born into, or the culture you are born into. You don't have much control over the health systems available to you, the education systems available to you, the social support systems available to you, or the employment opportunities available to you. Those sorts of things, for the most part, are manifestations of how the world is with you. Mind-body medicine recognizes that these social determinants of health are extremely important to helping us generate our health and well-being, but they are not the sorts of things that mind-body medicine is specifically oriented to helping us with. Mind-body medicine advocates for the social determinants of health to be in place, and the primary influence you have over that is your vote, because most of these things have to do with policies that governments put into place. I would encourage you, when the time comes, to vote, both provincially and federally, and to think about the social determinants of health and get involved in questions around that. Mind-body-lifestyle medicine tends to be more oriented to what you might think of as our personal determinants of health. I like to think of these as how you are with yourself, with others, and the world. Now, if you think of that, you have a lot more possibility of influencing, engaging in the management of and the regulation of this aspect. This domain would include general things that we think of as being important, like nutrition and physical exercise and conditioning, social support and social connections, family, friends, and the people that you turn to when you need support, and also what you might think of as spiritual practice. There are these four main core components. Each of these may have sidebars, if you'd like. For example, pro-sociality, our interest in the well-being of others in our community and world. Adequate rest and sleep also. And then there are more specific things that we can do for ourselves, which fall into the category of self-regulation and self-exploration. Together, these domains of the determinants of health foster the building of and the maintenance of our house of well-being and the building of resilience. Mind-body medicine, therefore, is about helping you build resilience in all domains of self, helping you learn self-exploration and self-regulation practices so you can confidently approach, influence, and modulate your biopsychosocial spiritual domains and your autonomic nervous system, learning to monitor and modulate these systems and others. Mind-body medicine is about using the tools or resources in your toolbox of inner and outer resources and learning to live well with whatever life brings you. Okay, well, thank you for joining in this session of our Introduction to Mind-Body Medicine, Self-Regulation, and Self-Exploration program, where we focused on understanding the basic foundations of our house of health and well-being. In future sessions, we will look at these other aspects of our human nature and how we can make use of this information to continue to build and live in and from our house of well-being. Until next time, cheers, and may you be safe from inner and outer harms and find peace and well-being.